Breathing is the golden gate for everything. Laura Simon-Sulzer joins us to tell us about her journey from childhood in Paris through war zones like Bosnia, Chechnya, and Yugoslavia as a war reporter, and a position as a White House Correspondent for Radio France before landing at the Hazeldon Treatment Center in Minnesota. She talks about codependency, becoming an expert in addiction disorders, and constantly revisiting her character defects. She specializes in discreet, custom-tailored addiction treatment. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery Podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery. Ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Nider. I'm a husband, a father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
The Illuminate Recovery Podcast is brought to you by Illuminate Billing Advocates. Make billing and collection simple with leader in substance abuse and mental health billing services. Verification and analysis of benefits, pre-authorizations, utilization management, accurate claim submission and management, denial and appeal management, and industry-leading reporting. Improve your practice's cash flow and your ability to help your clients with Illuminate Billing Advocates.
Laura Simon-Sulzer is with us today. Kurt and I are so excited to be able to talk with Laura. She is an addiction recovery coach, definitely recognizes the need for discreet, custom-tailored addiction approach. She comes from the Institute of Coaching at Harvard Medical School. She's a fellow there and researcher. She also has a master's degree in addiction disorder and journalism, and also French literature. So a wide variety of educational background. She is from Great Falls, Virginia. And Laura, thank you so much for visiting with us today and sharing your experiences.
You're so welcome.
I'm wondering, Laura, I can tell that you probably don't originate from the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about where you come from and how you ended up here?
Well, nobody being perfect. I'm from France. I was born and raised in Paris, from very dysfunctional family with a father who was an alcoholic. He committed suicide when he was 83 because he had no treatment. So being a French alcoholic and children of alcoholic and dysfunctional family, there was no way for me to survive in that country. The cultural country and so on, they're zero for the treatment model of addiction. And in Europe, except for the Anglo-Saxon model, they are pretty much zero. So I was dying. I was not saying to myself immediately that I was an alcoholic. It would be too easy. Actually, I started with food. After the war, when I was born, big was great because big babies, that was the country of starvation during the war. That was big was beautiful. So I was a chubby kid. I was over 8, constantly over 8. And my mother, being the food addict she is, was taking that pretext to go to the pastries in Paris with me and so on and so forth. So I was the collateral victim of her addiction, but I was born with that natural tendency. I cannot eat an ounce of sugar without willing to have more, and it's like a drink. I saw my family getting so happy, and especially men, when they started drinking on Sunday reunions or so, and as I didn't develop an attachment with my mother. I wanted to be like the men. And the men were super happy. They had drinks and they're laughing and they're saying big, beautiful, stupid stories, with big words. I said, I want to be like that. And my first contact with alcohol was half Italian, and in la grappa, in the Italian wine or liquor, you put a cube of sugar and you eat it after lunch. And of course, it multiplies the effect of alcohol, and you have that when you're a serious kid or when you're 7. Actually, I did it myself long before. I had my duck. It's called a duck, a canard. And so sugar and alcohol were associated for me with pleasure, being normal, belonging, having power, not like my mother. And I don't know, it was 10 or 11, but the first thing I did when I had some alimony, some money for myself. When I was a kid, they gave me some money, and I went to buy a bottle of red wine. We're in France. So at the corner of the street, there's a guy who sells alcohol, and I'm here. I'm 10, I'm 11, and he knows me, So I buy a bottle for my father, except that I didn't have a lot of money, so I buy a terrible red wine. And I'm alone in the house for once. My siblings are not there. I'm the first of 4, and I was the shield against my father. But I just stand up in front of a giant mirror, where I can see myself from the top of my head to the bottom of my shoes, and I experiment. I take a sip, I take 2 sips. It was like psychology, applied psychology. And I am at the top of the world until it's my 9th sip. And then I realize I cannot stop. But I'm dancing and I get sick. And I finish the bottle, of course. And I throw up. You think it would have stopped me? Not at all. I loved the first impression, and I continued. And I was a brilliant kid in school for what I loved, like Latin, French, literature, history, blah, 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 blah. But in math, for example, I was terrible. So every time I had to have to pass an exam, or I had a little drink, like my father. My father came to, I'm an abused kid, emotionally, sexually by my father, who didn't realize when he was drunk that I was not his mistress. He had to deal with my mother. My mother didn't deal with his problems. So when she didn't want him, he came to my room in the middle of the night, and I always had problems sleeping because I didn't know what to expect next. When from that kind of family, you are walking on eggshells. You are always on alert. Your cortisol level is super high. Your old brain is always ready to fight. So you're never in the green zone, you're in the red zone, what we call in neuroscience the red zone, and refer Rick Hansen or Tara Brach for that. So I was constantly hypervigilant. And I remember when my father was coming back from his work, and he was very successful, I could hear at the sound of the tires in the garage in what mood he was going to be and what I had to do. So everybody was going flying up in the upper floors. 3 brothers and sisters, my mother, who showed very little courage, and I had to deal with that, and I had to do what I had to do to calm him down. His depression, his threats to commit a suicide, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to be a victim. It's just my situation. It happened to many guys and girls like me. When it started being a problem, I always wanted to survive and live in the solution. So what do? The solution first is alcohol, more alcohol, then heroin. And I find always the worst guys, because they abused me. Of course, I repeat the pattern. So, surprise, surprise. I'm making the shots of my first boyfriend who sells me to his dealer for having sex for my first experience, and I don't realize because I think I do that out of love. But so long story short, I wanted to become to be in the military, and so I went to see the recruiter, and I told him point blank, I want to be a soldier. Yeah, super. You got great grades. You've got your degree in this and that. Do you have an idea? I said, yeah, my idea is to go to the front lines and shoot my enemy, idiot. And he says, I'm sorry without that. No, we can't. It was in 1978. In the French army, forget about it. So he's still laughing at this point at me if he's still alive. But I was not laughing at all, and I became a war reporter. And I went to combat, and in that little world of war reporters, we drink a lot. We used to drink a lot. We have a lot of sex, and we're living on constant high of, if it's not booze or drugs, it's adrenaline. And that's the most addictive, powerful thing I have tasted. And I still miss it to this day in recovery. I become a famous alcoholic reporter in France. In France, I'm one of the first women who is doing that job. Very difficult to have a career and being respected, so you have to work twice, 3 times the same, like a man. But at one point, I was in a very, very abusive situation with a man after 9-10 years, and I was miserable and was drinking like a fish and by myself. I'm sorry, I've got no low bottom story socially. I was drinking 3 or 4 bottles of champagne every night by myself. But everyone has his own bottom, plus wine and plus. And then I realized that I had a problem with alcohol. And I called an alcohologist in Paris, a very snobbish guy who said, yes, you have a problem with alcohol. You called me twice last night. You don't remember that we had an appointment made already. And I was put into an institution, and I was given so much medication. I didn't know where I was, who I was. I gained weight. And after a few weeks of this treatment, at the end, they took me in their office and they said, on the top of that, you don't drink. Yeah, right. So you're in Paris, you're free to go, you take your car, you're on the medication. The first thing you see at the corner of the street is a bar. So it was not a success for me. And they told me, go to AA, which I did. And the first time I pushed the door to AA, it was full of old men for me. I was in my 20s or 30s. And, it was not good enough for me. And on the top of that, they were asking for my phone number. Who do you think you are, guys? You want my freaking phone number? Go to hell. They were, and they had crazy stories, and they were losers for me. And I didn't know I was the biggest one in the room, of course, at the time, because all my defects of character was where I had no defects of character. It was always blame others was my way out. And I was literally dying. I was covering wars like Somalia, Chechnya, Yugoslavia. And I could barely talk on here. And I was drinking so much wine. And every night, every moment I could find alone, I was on my knees asking for help to a higher power. And I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was something that I could rely on because it was in my history. I survived. I always survived. I will survive this time, but this time I cannot do it myself. So basically, I did my step one without knowing it, you know. And one day came into my life a guy, Richard Herman, who used to be the owner of the most trendy, like Club 54 in Paris, the Bus Palladium, where I spent my nights for years and a lot of money. And he had lost everything. He came from jail, but he was sober and clean. And he decided that he would make a 12-step with me. Why me? I don't know. But God had answered my request. And for me, it took a few months before he brought me to literally from Chechnya to Hazeldon, Minnesota, where I stopped drinking. It's a treatment center. But he told me, no, it took 2 or 3 years of me telling you about my story and so on. So again, denial. But he came literally with me, accompanying me, totally drunk from Paris Charles de Gaulle to Chicago O'Hare, and then to Hazeldon. And Hazeldon is the treatment center. And I said, I know it's the end of the road for me and maybe a new life, but there was nobody. It was on a Thursday night and it was dark, and I was pounding on the doors. Do you know who I am? I'm the famous Laura Simon. And you don't expect me. Well, who are you? And I was going to do their 4 steps, you know. And suddenly a door cracked up and a nurse showed up and said, shh, they're all sleeping and it's Thanksgiving. Thanks what? And I didn't use these words, but okay, I was in detox. Richard stayed for a few days as an alumni, and I was obliged to swim in the pool. You know, but they gave me the tools, and from that day on, I understood the program. I never graduate because we don't graduate, you know. But I was ready for the quest. I found what I was looking for in life as a mission or my passion. It was to understand better myself and helping others, because before I was comparing out. I was better than, less than, not enough, don't belong. So maybe instead of talking about defects of character, I would say defense mechanisms to be nicer. But they were terrible, and they had a terrible impact on me and my family, my friends, my bosses, my colleagues. And at the end of the stay, it was supposed to be 4 weeks, and I stayed 5 because I didn't want to surrender. They said, you have to surrender. I said, wait, I'm French. We surrendered enough in our history now, okay? So I won't surrender, okay? That I don't like that vocabulary of losers. I said, okay, the door is open. Finally, I surrendered using another word, because I discovered that there was the little word of 4 letters, care. I surrendered to the care of God. And for me, God was a punishing man, and I didn't trust anybody, especially not myself, in that cruel world. So here I am, back to Paris, another world. Very hard first year in recovery, but I managed to be assigned as the correspondent at the White House for my company. I was still a journalist and the correspondent for the United States. Last 2-3 years, and at one point I said, okay, if I want to make progress in my recovery, I cannot stay in that ego land, and I cannot make progress. So I'm gonna drop that. And I did take a deep leap of faith and I studied addiction counseling. And I met my husband. He's an American from New York. And we got married, and I'm a city girl, and he wanted to be in Virginia. And I was in Virginia, not drinking, not doing anything special, you know, vanilla life for me. And I gained 80, 90 pounds. And that's the old thing I was doing all day long, complaining about my life and eating corn syrup and junk food from the United States, which is the worst and the best for an addict. And you know, you have very high, powerful products to shoot, you know. And I'm a certified addiction counselor, ready to go to for licensure. And I've got a problem with the board because sometimes boards are mafia. So I was ready for my licensure. I got the mentor. I had thousands and thousands and thousands hours of. We certified you on the basis of your master in California, but we don't get it for the licensure. My husband was a lawyer. You don't go after the city hall. I lost, and I was very bitter. And what do? I eat more, and I complain more, and I'm the victim. And at one point, I said to myself, "Okay, I'm a fat suburban wife in a stupid world, and I take my 45 with 2 bullets." And I say, my family rejected me. I'm not well married. I'm a failure. I'm fat. And when I go back to France, it's just, I'm treated like crap. I'm going to commit a suicide, you know? And then I think, yeah, but committing a suicide is one thing, but I know that it's going to hurt the people I love most in my life, like my brothers. And there was a church just across the street. I was not a Catholic at the time. And, but you know, a higher power is a higher power. We find it where we can. So I crossed the street, and it's Wednesday afternoon, 1:30 p.m. There's nobody in the church except the maintenance guy who doesn't speak English. I don't speak Spanish, but he clearly explains to me that there was no priest in that church that could save my life. And I was sobbing with my 45 in my purse, and I was finally I knocked at the door, knocked the door for long minutes. And when you're a radio journalist, you know minutes. It's really long. And the door opens from the office where the priest stay, and a guy appears, and he doesn't tell me, "How can I help you?" Said, "What do you want?" Said, "You're a freaking priest?" And he said, "Yes." "So you have to save my freaking life." And I spent 1 hour with him, and it saved my life. And from that day on, I decided that I could be a victim of my father, the past, the society, whatever. But I'm no more a victim at this moment. That is enough. The victimization in the society for me is the contrary of the spirit of the program. We have something in common, and we compare in wherever we come from, rich, poor, black, white, Asian, whatever, LGBT or not. We come to the rooms not to out and criticize the others. We have that solution because we have that problem in common, and most of all because we have the solution. So I decided that I was not going to be a victim anymore. And since then, my life is financially much worse than it has been. I mean, it's another life, but I'm happy. And when I'm not, I do a 10-step. Where have you been dishonest, afraid, resentful, selfish? Selfish is the big one. So I take my list of character defects and I rate them. I do a rate. R for recognize the feeling. Let's say it's frustration. A for accept. I've got to sit with that MF, and talk to him or it and have a dialogue. And I have to accept that I'm jealous, angry, resentful, everything I don't like about me or others for that matter. And then I for interview. So I make an interrogation. I make an interview with that feeling. What's your use for me? What do you mean? Are you a red flag? Are you something that comes back very often in my life? When was the first time I felt you, and so on and so forth. And D, detach and give that to God. My eighth step, I only ask you to remove my shortcomings. That helps a lot. So as far as my practice is concerned, I'm a recovery coach, and I'm specialized in codependence because I think it's the mother of a lot of addictions. And even if people don't use necessarily the traits of character we develop by being codependent, because we were raised and born in a family where dysfunctions were so high that we had to survive and not to strive for life. A common core of traits of character. We are very often people pleaser, seeking approval, complainers sometimes. But we have a lot of features like this. And when a client approaches me and doesn't really tell me I've got a problem with alcohol, I want to stop. Not everybody's like that, not at this stage. I use a method that surprised me by its success recently. I tell them, okay, how are you codependent? I give them questionnaires. If their attention span is longer than 20, I can give them more. And it's very interesting because they have the power of discovering themselves and discovering what they could change, because there is a solution. They can be the opposite. And that's the beauty in CBT, because cognitive and you change your behavior. And pretty much at the end, everybody wants to stop drinking or using because they realize that, bottom line, yeah, it's maybe not the problem, but it just crystallized the problem, and you want to get rid of that. So that's pretty much about my little life for now. I'm 61. I live in the woods in Northern Virginia. Sometimes I'm bored to tears, but I've got my clients, and sometimes I'm very just happy to be there. Before I had to do and to be someone. I'm just that. And a publisher asked me to write a book about my life. I said, no freaking way. Not interesting, except for alcoholics, maybe, or addicts for that matter. I've been addicted to caffeine and benzos, among other treats like that. And he wanted to call that from Paris to Great Falls. Like Great Falls was the end of the road, the rat hole. It's not at all. I'm more happy than if I were staying with you in France, idiot. So, by the way, I would be dead, incapacitated, or in an institution. So thank you very much. Have a nice day. Let me live my humble life, which I define by trying to be not considering myself above or under anybody, taking responsibility for my actions, setting healthy boundaries, because I had problems with that, and I help my clients pretty well with that. And because I used to set boundaries, but they were very temporary or they were very violently expressed. So it doesn't work this way. And if you have any question, I'm yours. So
yeah, lots of questions. One would be, I mean, now you're in Great Falls, right? You're at the end of the road. So, you know, in the last year and a half with COVID, everything's kind of gone online and to telehealth, that kind of thing. How have you kind of run your business in the past, and how are you running it now? Do you do everything on Zoom? Do you do everything online with your clients, or are most of your clients there nearby?
it has been a match. Clients I had before continued to come with masks if they were willing. Sometimes codependents with a narcissist wife said, no, you don't come see her. So they're on Zoom. Now they're the vaccine, everybody's back. But I've got clients in California, so it's a long commute. And there's a way to work through Zoom and or other outfits for that matter. But and I give them more assignments. I like to give my clients assignments because I want them to be responsible for their recovery. I can talk the talk, they have to walk the walk. And it's sometimes pretty funny to do. Sometimes it's hard. But I'm also available 24 hours 7. So when they have a crisis, it can be midnight for me, and they can call me. So the first 15 minutes are free, and then we work on the exercise if there is anything, a relapse, a bad feeling that we need to rate, and the person cannot do it by herself or himself because, you know, it's overwhelming, especially in early recovery.
Laura, let me ask you a question. You've told, I mean, this incredible story, and it's an incredible story, but it's filled with abuse and addiction, and, you know, it's compiled. It's that complex, a really complex history that you shared. And you talked about being hypervigilant and walking on eggshells and some of those behaviors that are attached to post-traumatic stress disorder. Is that something else that you've worked on and deal with?
Well, it's a constant progress. You know, Codependence Anonymous, the 12-step program have really saved my life. As I was in recovery from mood-altering substances, they have a beautiful questionnaire, actually called the patterns of codependency versus the patterns of recovery. So I could literally go through them, and I saw my portrait just getting up to my face like a drawing. I have other questionnaires. Alcoholics, children of alcoholics help me a lot. I've got a tendency to be so harsh with myself, you know, and I have to be more gentle. I can help others, but I have to help myself first. And that's what my family doesn't understand in France. They want me to be super successful like I used to be. I don't care about that. I have to be sober first. I have to save my own skin, and to go to AA, to go to OA. I'm in meeting every day, one meeting a day at least with a podcast or something, and I call. So that's my priority. If I don't put myself first, my recovery first, I cannot help anybody and I cannot survive. It's like, you know, they tell you when you take the plane, if the oxygen mask falls down, put it first to yourself, then help your children. It's the same thing. So that's what I learned. And neuroscience helped me a lot through studies, meditation, calming the agitated or hyperactive brain. I was talking about Eric Hansen or Tara Brach, but there are multiple people. I like the new movie of Gabor Mate, that Canadian doctor. about the trauma of childhood. However, I think that he's right when he's right, but he tends to underestimate the genetic factor of the disease. But it's just my opinion. It's a good reference. For love addicts, I would advise, I would say, go immediately to not Melody Beattie, but Pia Melody, who was one of the pioneers in the 80s at the Meadows in Arizona of the concept of codependency and its solutions. I go to Susan Forwards, who is a PhD and worked on the characteristic of the abusers, because it's important to recognize your enemy. Otherwise, you wear a golden sword, but you're fighting ghosts. You don't know where they are in front of you. So, and it's not necessarily a struggle, or as I always put that in terms of combat, violence. No, it can be much more. So I try to go back to the green zone by breathing. Breathing is the golden gate for everything. You take long, deep breath and exhale twice as long, and your middle brain, whether it's the amygdala or it's the hippocampus, it's about your ANS, your nervous system. I have to go from the over agitation to calm using the breathing, because I know I need my parasympathetic system to calm down. And there are many techniques for that. It would be too long to explain on it.
But absolutely. And it sounds like you're very active still in your recovery. It's not right. It's not over. It's a journey to the end of our life, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's the only journey that was ever interesting to me. But
so what's next on your journey, Laura? What are you doing next to further your recovery?
For my recovery, I think I'm going to dedicate more time to adult child of alcoholics, because I think it's the last frontier. It goes deeper than CODA. And my last addiction is nicotine. Next Monday, I quit. So I've got my plan. I've got my gut squad, which I call also my BMW squad, because I'm going to be bitching, moaning, and whining to them for at least 3 weeks. But they're prepared.
I love it.
And there's Nicotine Anonymous. There's some patches. And if I have to bite my pillow, I've been through a detox from sugar. It looks like nothing. It's the worst. It's worse than heroin. Believe me. You want to die. You don't know how to exist. And all your cells are craving for more sugar and more, by the way, sweeteners, because all these artificial things are even worse than the sugar, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. And so if you had to, this is an interesting thing. I've never asked anybody this, but if you have to rate the hardest substance that you came off of, what would you say it would be? And I know that you've tried nicotine before. So some people I've heard say nicotine is probably their hardest substance to quit using. But
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I would put the heroin, but I was not an heroin addict like now with fentanyl, so I cannot talk for them, because it must be terrible to be of fentanyl. But then I would put sugar, and stopping to drink was a piece of cake. I just had to be accompanied and to have the tools of the program. It was a piece of cake. And don't get me wrong, I was super alcoholized. I mean, I was drinking like a fish for my constitution. So, I mean, I'll tell you in a week or two what really comes first. I think it does.
I like that. I like that approach, right? You're just not sure, but you're going to do it one way or the other, and you got a plan, and I love that. We're going to have to check back in with you and see how it goes.
Please be my BMW squad.
I love it, Laura. You've shared just an incredible story, And I know you've shared it because it was your life and it's all you knew. But from my standpoint, there's a tremendous amount of trauma and just wounds. The codependency is just one point, one piece of that, right? Is you were taught how to be codependent, and to learn something different, you have to expose yourself to very different thinking, very different ideas. And it really does take a long time. And I can tell you've done a tremendous amount of work and you're really passionate about it and helping other people now learn from your experience. And so I appreciate that.
But I'm sorry, you make me realize something today, Shelley, that the courage is not to go after, under the bombing from NATO, or it's not going to Afghanistan with the Mujahideens. It's just having the courage of being myself and accepting myself for who I am and not what I pretend or what others want. And that requires tremendous courage, and it's really hard. It's really hard. But
Yeah.
I can help.
Well, it is, because isn't that at the core what every one of us questions is if we're enough, if we're good enough, if we have enough, if we're smart enough, if we're, it's always that enough question. And at the core, most people, I think, experience that same struggle.
That's true.
I love that you bring that up, because you're right. It's all the other stuff is just kind of peripheral out here.
Not humiliation, humility.
Yeah, humiliation.
Thank you for talking about that to me. You made me make a lot of progress today.
That's fantastic. I love that we can do the journey together, because I think we can't do it alone for sure. Laura,
welcome anytime, guys. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, this was so cool. It was very, very, very helpful to me as well. So thank you, and we'll stay in touch. Yeah, and the name of my company is Custom Addiction Recovery Anonymous LLC. So it's www.carallc.com. And my phone number is 202-491-8837. Call anytime. Fantastic. And I know people will want to talk to you because you're super fun to talk to.
Thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Shelley. And talk to you soon. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.